Okay, so here's the deal. We got our little building hanging around out here. It's doing okay. If you're building a roof and you would like to go through and have the roof go away for a little bit, there's a couple different ways we might approach that. Let's think about this. There are a number of different views that you can create. In fact, that's really we're going with a whole session for the model. And there are these views, level 1, level 2, level 3, where we're really creating a lot of this stuff. These are probably some of the master views. But we can go through and create as many different views as we want to kind of show specific things. So there's a couple of things we can do. We got a main 3D view here, it's the default 3D view. In this view, we can go through and hide the roof in this view. Okay, and then it will be hidden when you all work with it. The problem is, about 5 minutes from now, you'll decide that you actually want to see that roof again. Okay, and you have to kind of keep on flip-flopping back and forth between the two things. So let's kind of show you a different way of approaching it. That really is kind of the general principle to how we're going to work with a lot of these views. So this is the default 3D view. So I can hide the roof in this view, but what I would like to do is actually have a view, maybe one view that has the roof and another view that doesn't have the roof. Here's what you can do. What you'll take is the default 3D view and you'll duplicate it. So I'll right click on it and I'll say duplicate the view. Okay. You'll see I now have copy of 3D and I can rename that. I'm just going to call that 3D with no roof. Okay, get used to the notion that some views are actually going to go on sheets and be the final presentation views. You're probably going to create a lot of views, which are just working views, which are really helpful ones just for you as you keep on going through the process. Okay, in 3D with no roof, what I can do is either choose that roof, and one thing I can do is just hide it. I can right click on it and say hide it in the view. That will take care of that one. Another thing you can do is there's this notion of visibility graphics where we can control the things that are visible in the view. And that's something we're going to be working with a lot in terms of customizing the views ready to put on sheets, where all the different elements here, the wall elements, the window elements, the roof elements, the curtain wall elements, those are all different categories of elements. And you can turn on and off entire categories very quickly on a view-by-view basis by doing this. We'll go to the View menu. I'll say Visibility Graphics. And this basically presents you with a list of all the different categories of what's floating around inside the model right now. So roofs is actually one of the model categories. That's a real type of 3D model element. If I go down to roofs, I went a little too far there. Say roofs. Say OK to that. Okay. You'll see that we now have the roofless version. Okay, so I have the standard version that has the roof. I have the roofless version, and I can do it that way by just hiding that, and that's one way to approach it. So get used to the idea that you have several different sort of views, and each of them have different attributes to it. Another way of approaching it, that just sort of is another good principle, and that's what I actually was showing the student in the last class, is let me duplicate this again. Here it is right there. That's the kind of standard one. Let me rename it. I'm going to call this 3D with the section box. And you might remember I talked about the section box being one of my favorite little tools. The section box will allow us to go ahead and basically turn on the section box for the view. It's really a view-by-view thing. And another way to approach this is to take the section box and just push the top of the section box down. Okay, so you're looking at the floor plan view that way. So again, just two different ways of doing it. Just go through and whatever one you think is the most effective. But the nice thing is, just keep yourself with different views. Kind of keep the 3D view that you want to use for the presentation, as well as the 3D views that you want to use for your internal editing. So just kind of adapt them wherever you want. Okay. Any other random questions about roofs? Anything else? Okay, let me go ahead and show you one special case that we ran into that I was talking about with the last group, which may be of interest to you. It's the whole notion of really what you do when you have a roof that sort of tucks under another roof. And it's kind of a funny little case, but you often get it with gable roofs, so let me show you what I mean. I'll go back to that main 3D view.
Okay, and here's where you might run into it. Okay, this view, the way it's set up right now, looks pretty good. We have a gable on this end, and we have a gable on this end. We have a nice little valley kind of happening right here. Where you sometimes run into this, that's a little bit different, is if we change the roof around a little bit in terms of where the gables are. For example, let me change it around. I'm going to switch this roof. I'm going to edit the footprint. And I'll say that, hey, what I want to do is actually go through and, let me think about this. I'm going to take the slope off of that one. I'm going to take the slope off of this one. But I'm going to add the slope to this one. Looks like I missed it on that one. Let me finish this and show you what it looks like. Okay, perhaps you've seen a roof like this. And as we go looking at this roof, no problem. I can go through and attach that roof right here up to this roof. That'll be fine. Okay. But you'll notice I have a little bit of a problem right in there.
There's a gap between the two, because what happens is this roof is actually standing back really at the edge of where this roof is. It's not actually tucking under and kind of picking up that other roof. Okay, so a couple things we can do that'll sort of make that a little bit better. There's two things you really have to do. One is get the roof to come back and tuck under and touch this wall. The other thing is you actually need a little bit of wall on the inside there to go through and fill in so that we have something that goes from level 2 all the way up to the roof. We sort of need really like a soffit wall, or we need a gable end wall, something that's a little bit higher. So
to do that, and it's actually a little bit tricky as an operation, but let me kind of show you the general procedure. And that is what you would do is something like this. You say, let's go ahead and grab that roof. And when you choose roof,
all these different sort of editing things become available, including one that's up here, which is called joining roofs.
And where joining roofs is good is it's when you need to have a roof that's defined by making several different little pieces, and the only way to really kind of make it think of itself as one whole roof is to sort of join different edges together. You need to get a little bit of manual help to figure out how all the pieces fit. So one real common use of it is I can say join the roofs. And what I can do is actually just grab this edge of the roof and have it join back. Let me undo that again so you can watch that carefully. I'll say join the roof. If you notice way down here in the status bar, it actually says select an edge at the end of the roof that you wish to join. So I'll grab that edge, and it's going to ask where do you want to join it to. I'm going to join it to that wall. And it'll tuck it back. So I'll choose this edge. I'll choose this wall. Okay, and the roof is tucked under.
Okay, so far so good. That actually took care of half the problem. What's going on? Sort of this really odd little case, but it happens with gable roofs. We have these little things where you just gotta slide on it. The second thing we need to do to really make this work is we really need to put a little bit of what's called a gable end wall right in here. Okay. And that's a little bit trickier because that's actually a very custom, funny piece if you want to think about how it's constructed. Let me kind of zoom on out here a little bit and we'll think about it. What I really want to have is a wall that's going, it's almost from the second level here up to the roof. Okay, but I got to think about how to define that. It's a little bit tricky in terms of trying to get it in the right order of operations, but I'll show you how one way to approach it. You can decide which way is best for you. I'm at the second floor level now, so you can actually see the top of that wall, and this is actually the place where we have that gap. Right in here, is this is the wall is stopping right there. It's not continuing further. We want to continue it up there.
So what can we do? Looks something like this. What I can do is, let me even zoom on a little closer. Okay. I'm going to go through and create another wall. And this new wall is going to be a little bit different. It won't just be an extension of this wall. It's going to come on over here, but as opposed to starting at level 1, it's going to start at level 2 and go up. So to do that, what I'm going to do is go to the wall tool. I'll grab that same exterior wall type. I think this is my brick on studs or something like that. I'm going to say, as opposed to starting at level 1, I'm going to start at level 2. I'm going to go up some height, either to level 3, I can say unconnected, 20 feet, whatever it is. But I'm basically going to draw a wall here, going that way. Now, I went ahead and drew that as a separate wall because I don't want it to actually be joined to this wall. I'm going to actually have them be two separate walls that kind of come together at the corner because they have these different base points. Now, what I may want to do relative to this wall is I can align some things. For example, I just sort of drew that and I think I'm pretty close, but if I really want to make sure those two things line up, I might want to say let's align this and align that outer surface here to match the outer surface here. And lock those. Okay, that just makes sure that if one moves, they both move together. I can now go ahead and pull this over, and I'll pull it over the other way too. Let's take a look at this. Actually, I would take it all the way across to the other side. And I will take a look at that in 3D. Let's see how we're looking. Not too awfully bad. Not quite right just yet, but we can do some different things. One thing we could do is, let's attach this roof to that roof. Okay, did a pretty good job. Not 100% yet, but it did a pretty good job. So let's kind of keep talking about it. Just when you attach roofs, a lot of times you'll get it right. Every once in a while, you get it wrong. It just doesn't quite figure out exactly which of the different attachment conditions should dominate, so it's a little bit confusing. So we're going to go ahead and give it a little bit of help. What's going on? Because attaching is really a good thing, but attaching is really just automating a process that you could do manually. Kind of like in the same way arraying is just automating the process of copying and putting constraints. That's cool. Okay. Attaching really is just saying, take that wall and let's figure out where the boundaries are that it should come to and just clip off the edges. Okay. So how you can do that when it's not quite right is as follows. Okay, I just need basically a good view that's going to show me that wall. Okay, so I can look at it this way in elevation. I can look at it a number of different ways. Actually, let me even show it to you from the inside. Level 1. I'm going to put a camera inside just so you can sort of see it. Again, this may not be a camera that I'm actually going to publish on a sheet somewhere, but it's a good camera just for helping me understand what the situation is. So there's that little wall in terms of what's going on. And if I do a little bit of looking up, there's sort of where it is at the top. Okay, so I got a decision to make here in terms of, do I want to, and you have a lot of choices here, do I want it to sort of basically follow the edge of the roof? Do I want it to have this kind of beam or some sort of soffit coming down? You can go choose whatever you want. To make this happen, I could do it a number of different ways. Oh, if I'm going to do this, I have a number of different, possibilities. I could do it in section, but I think I'm going to actually, or in elevation, but I think I'm actually going to cut a section because I think will help me the best. I'm just going to cut a section across the building right here to here. And why am I doing that? That's just going to be a really good working view. It's going to show me exactly the area of interest right now. So if I go to that section, say, okay, you can really see that wall right there. That's the wall that's in question right now. So let's think about what we want to have happen to that wall. Okay, clearly we would like the top of that wall not to stick out the top of the other side. So it would be very, very good to go through and just kind of finish flipping off that top piece over here. Okay, it's already sort of flipped it over here. I might like to actually kind of flip out this whole piece too, so that as opposed to blocking the view, it's all open. So here's how you do it. If you choose that piece, we can do something called editing the profile. And when you edit the profile of the wall, which is very much like attaching the top and base, what it does is it says, okay, well, either the top and base or the profile is going to dominate. And if you go ahead and do the profile, we'll remove the top and base constraints. Okay. That's the wall. That's the natural shape of the wall in incline mode. Okay. So if we would like to go ahead and change the boundary of the wall, what we can do in incline mode is just go ahead and draw a new boundary for it. So here's what I have in mind. We can say that I would really like the top of the wall to go here, and I can even lock the pink line there. I'd like the top of this side to be here, and again I can even lock that pink line there. Now, in pink line mode, you will recognize that you can only have like one set of boundaries in terms of what's going on. So I can't have all these intersecting lines. So I need to get rid of some of this. I need to get rid of that one. I need to get rid of that one. Over here, I just need to do a little trimming up. That looks pretty good. Over here, maybe trim those against each other. Okay. So can you understand what will happen if I say finish right now? Okay, if I finish right now, okay, we got the top part taken care of. It's looking pretty good. But we don't quite have the bottom part taken care of. The bottom part's still sort of protruding down in there. Okay, not to worry though. We can go ahead and just choose that wall again and keep on editing its profile. Now, you get to make a choice over here about how to get rid of that part. You could go ahead and cut the wall so it's resting on top of the roof. You could cut the wall so the wall is kind of coming down to the bottom of the roof and we're wrapping the sheetrock around the bottom of that wall and that last rafter and kind of tying that all together. That's the way I'd probably do it. But if we say this and we sort of highlight that line, okay, again, I got sort of too many pink lines right now. What I need to do is just a little bit of trimming. And I'll trim this one to here. And I can get rid of the excess pink lines. And I'll finish that up. Okay, now we actually have what we want in there. So I apologize if that's kind of confusing. It's one of the more complicated operations you sort of have to do with Revit. It's to go to one of these things where you have a wall that attaches at the top and you want to sort of give a custom shape at the bottom. But that's about the worst you ever have to do to a wall. It's really very, very custom adjust the shape. The nice thing is if you lock the pink lines and if the wall reshapes, the pink lines will follow and that wall will go ahead and kind of follow the different profile too. Okay, so I only show that because some people were sort of interested in seeing with that. But again, if you don't have that condition, don't worry if that sort of went by a little bit fast. There'll be some other point you'll need to do that, and it won't be for this assignment if you don't actually have that condition. Okay, so any other random roof questions? Nope. Okay, you're all roofed out. That's good. Okay, let's talk about some of the other topics. I want to get through fixtures and talk about getting all these things on sheets a little bit. Okay, how many of you have actually gone ahead and put in some like plumbing fixtures or put in some furniture or something like that? Okay, all of that? Beautiful. Okay, you're doing great there. The only thing you have to sort of worry about with fixtures is typically they're all components. That's kind of good. In the template, there's a lot of the standard components loaded. But as you go working with things, let me load in some fixtures. I'll go on out and get some plumbing fixtures. You'll find that, I'll get some toilets. Let me get the domestic toilet and I'll get the commercial toilet. I'll get those both. Bring them on in here. But the only thing you have to worry about relative to fixtures is this. Some fixtures are hosted on walls, some fixtures are hosted on floors, some fixtures can kind of go wherever they want to go. And you just have to be a little bit cautious as you place them about what type of fixture it is, because if it's fighting you and won't let you place things, it typically has to do with the fact that you're not sort of selected on the right type of hosting element. Let me show you what I mean. So domestic toilets, the good news is they can go most anywhere. You can put them on the floor, just wherever you like them to be. So let me go ahead and choose that. I'll come on out, I can put it here in the middle of the room, I can space to kind of rotate it around, I can put a couple of them in here, whatever it is. They're kind of good. Now, you can get them right up against the wall if you want to, but they don't have the wall as a constraint. They can sort of be wherever you want them to be, as most domestic toilets are. You don't have to put them right up against the wall. On the other hand, if you go ahead and choose the commercial toilet, and I can choose either the 15-inch high one or the 19-inch high one, depending upon whether you want ADA compliance. We call it height line, as opposed to a typical seat height. You can choose that. As you bring it on in, notice as you're trying to place it, you're getting this cannot do, no, cannot do. And it will not do until you actually get right over a wall. And why is that? Because that has to be hosted on a wall. Okay, so just be aware of that. Some fixtures, some sort of components have this requirement about how they're hosted. Some things are wall-based, some things are ceiling-based, other things can be freestanding. So you have to kind of like, you know, if it's fighting you, chances are it's just a hosting issue. What's going on. Most of the furniture and stuff like that, that can be almost anywhere in terms of locating that. That's just kind of, you know, furniture is generally freestanding. It can be almost anywhere that it wants to be. Have we found any wall-mounted furniture? Let's see what's out. I think if there was a blackboard or something like that, there'd be something like that. Let's see what else I got in here. Tables, TV, flat screen. Ooh, that's pretty good. Didn't used to have that one. Most of these things can really be hosted almost anywhere. Those, again, are all just freestanding pieces. You want to put the sofa in there, whatever, bring it on in. Just kind of put it wherever you want to. Now, one piece of componentry you may want to pay attention to is cabinetry. Let's talk about that. Because when I say there's going to be an 8-foot lead bench, go ahead and I'm thinking of a really basic bench. This is not your custom green kitchen. You don't have to really design this to the nth degree. Really what we want to have is, a couple of maybe drawer stacks and maybe some sort of cabinet. Yeah, it doesn't have to be like really detailed in terms of what's going on, because really for what we're doing in this assignment, it's much more about that you're just getting the components in as opposed to you've done a really fantastic kitchen design or lab bench design. But let's kind of talk about sort of some of the pieces that you can bring in and how they work. So under components, you'll find, let me load them up. I think there's already some of these located in the starting point file for you. There's casework. You'll find base cabinets. And under base cabinets, you have 4 drawer bases. We have 2 bins. These are largely based on the notion of more of a kind of residential things for a kitchen. A corner unit, a double door unit, a filler piece. Let me go ahead and bring in that 4 drawer unit for now. When you bring in the 4 drawer cabinet, you'll find that it has a series of different sizes. A 12-inch wide one, a 15-inch wide one, an 18-inch wide one, a 24-inch wide one. Let me go ahead and place, say the 21-inch wide one. I'll put it up here close to the wall. Now, as I'm placing it, it actually has a directionality too. The front of the cabinet is indicated by where the little arrows are. Okay, so if it's backwards and you can't see the doors, basically you can be rotated around. And what's going on? Let's go ahead and zoom on in there. If you want to get that thing right up on the wall, let me go back to thin line mode so we can do that again. If I want to get that right up against the sheetrock, what I need to do is just do a little bit of alignment. So here's the back of the cabinet, here's the sheetrock wall. If I want the back of the cabinet right on the sheetrock, I'll choose the cabinet. And I'll do a little alignment. I'll say align, and I'll grab the surface of the wall, and then choose that one. Now watch out for walls, because walls do this when you're aligning to them. This is kind of a thick wall. So there's actually many different points we could select on the wall. The first one, in fact, that a lot of people run into is just the center line of the wall. Okay, but if that's not the reference point you want for the wall, if you're trying to align and it's sucking your thing into the wall, okay, go ahead and do this. If you tab, what tabbing does is it'll rotate around and kind of let you choose other reference lines. So that's the exterior face, that's the face of the studs, that's the interior face of the core. I can really choose any face of any of these different surfaces. So what I'm going to do is choose that face and choose that one there. Yes?
While you're on the topic about tabs, if you're trying to select an object where there's multiple objects layered,
yes,
you tab between the objects too?
It'll rotate through.
All the objects?
Yes, it kind of goes through, it's the whole orienting, it rotates through the whole system and through what it thinks is the most likely to the least likely.
So any line within that range?
Yeah. Okay. It takes some work. Tabbing is sort of an interesting thing about how you really kind of get down to what you want. But you generally you'll eventually get to it. Okay. Now this cabinet, you'll notice it's a 21-inch wide cabinet. If we want to, we can go ahead and get a different size. There's 21, there's 24. What would happen if you wanted a 30-inch wide one, you might ask? And all these things are really just controlled by parameters. So you'll see that the cabinet is actually made up of, it has a width right there, 1.9, it has a depth, it has a height. Let's talk about that for a second. Kitchen cabinets by default are, it sounds weird, 2'10.5" tall. Okay? They're not quite 3 feet tall. The countertop is 3 feet tall. What happens is cabinets are almost always made to 2'10.5" with the idea that we have a 3/4 inch piece of plywood and then some sort of either a laminate or a granite or some sort of surfacing on top of that. And that'll take up that last 1.5 inches. So when you see these things at 2'10.5", don't worry about it. That's just really what's going on. It's always 2'10.5". Okay. For bathroom cabinets, the finished height is 32 inches typically. Okay, so we'll be 2'6.5" is the top of those. Okay, so we got some cabinetry over here. That's kind of looking fine in terms of what's going on. If I want to change the size, for example, I want to make a 36-inch wide one or a 30-inch wide one, I'll just duplicate it and I'll change its width right there. So how do you go through and change the width? You kind of change the parameters. How do you create a cabinet that's a custom height? If you want a cabinet that's 42 inches tall as opposed to 36 inches tall, again, just change the parameters. And you kind of keep on trying to resize itself and work. Okay, got one nice little drawer there. Let me zoom on out. If I want to copy and put another one in here or array them, I can do that. Maybe I'll copy this guy. I'll grab that as a handle and I'll put a second drawer over here. So I got 2 of them going now. You can start just building up your runs of cabinetry this way. And really for what you need to do for the assignment, that's kind of sufficient. Again, don't worry about doing a very detailed design with cabinetry. It can be pretty straightforward. Another type of cabinetry, though, you may want to pay attention to relative to the assignment is a countertop. Let's kind of show you where those are. There's a couple of ways of doing countertops that you want to know about. There are some countertop components that are already ready to define, and you can grab one of those. Okay. There's also a way of doing custom countertops. And let's kind of show you the simple way first, which is just to use one that's already defined. So I'll say architecture component. We'll load on in there and we'll go out to the casework. And countertops are here. So we got tops with holes in them if you want to put a sink in there. Top with a sink and a hole. Just a top with nothing else. An island sink that doesn't have, an island sink is wide and doesn't have a backsplash, is what's going on there. An L-shaped sink with a hole or with not. What else you got there? A vanity countertop, a lot of different ones in here. I'm gonna go for that like L-shaped one, maybe with the sinkhole. You know what the difference between those is? Oh, it's can you see that? It's very subtle. 2 has a 45-degree bend at the corner. The first one doesn't. It has just a 90-degree bend at the corner. I'll go for that one. We'll bring it on in. I'm going to put it in that corner. So here we are. You'll see here it is. It's rotated a little bit funny. I'll hit the space bar to rotate it around until I get what I like. That's what I like. And then I'll come back over here and try and put it in that corner. I might need to go through and either zoom in or line it later to kind of get it right in that corner, but I really want to get it right there so that the backsplash is just on the inside. Okay, now you're looking at this countertop and you're looking at my cabinets and you're saying, no, that's not going to work. What can we do about that? These built-in cabinets, or these countertop cabinets that are components that are available here, they actually have a nice little ability to stretch if you need to. So after you've put it in there, you can sort of type in parameters, but you can also do this. You can sort of stretch them out. And as you stretch them out, you might notice that the length of leg 1 and the length of leg 2 is giving you the option to change that. There's also this whole thing about the sink location and where it is and the size of that hole. It's all parametric. So even though it's kind of a component, you can get an awful lot of flexibility out of it just by doing that. And when you go through and do this, and you put that component in there, let's go ahead and put a camera in. That's kind of what we're looking at right now. And really, that's kind of, maybe I'll put some more over here so it's not free-floated. We'll give it a little more support to what's going on. But you don't need to get into a detailed kitchen design for this lab bench. You can be really simple in terms of what's going on. Because really, my intention really more of having you put it in there is to more just give you a sense of scale, where it's going to be, so I can imagine people pass behind it relative to where they're sitting. It's more that than it is the detailed design. So let's just talk about components for a second and different types of components you might want to put in. And yes?
I'm going to make sure that, obviously in this case, it worked with the countertop that go on top of the cabinets as opposed to having a few inches above it. Is it perfectly aligned?
Oh, that really has to do with, it's more just the way the project, these are defined. Like this is just, that is at 2'10½". I know that. Let's see how this one is actually defined. Does it say anything about its base? It doesn't. It's sort of embedded in this whole thing is this notion that it is 3 feet or 2'10½". If we actually, let me even try this. Let's see if I can get this right. If I say that, it won't let me do it from that view. It's just kind of funny because it's almost more implicit in terms of what's going on, but if I went through and I cut the section again or something like that, let me see what that section looks like. Can I see that thing back in there? Nope. Let me either just cut a section or I can do an interior elevation. Either one of these. Let me put an elevation inside. Got the wrong one. So I almost have to verify it. In this case, I know that just because the parts are designed in such a way that it's 2'10½", and the other one that they're staying in alignment. But if you've offset this for some reason, for example, if this thing is either up a little bit, so it's not at the standard height, maybe it's 4 inches taller. Okay, there's no easy way. I can't just stretch it. I can't just lock it or align it or something like that. What I have to do then is go back into this component. Let's go back over here. Go back in, see where I put this thing. I swear I just put that somewhere. I'm going to think about where it is in just a second. Structural plans? Is it a structural elevation? Nah. Oh, it's interesting. I'm looking at the wrong project. I still have the last one open for the last assignment there. 4A, section 4, it's over here. There you go. So in here, I can take this and I can edit its type. And what I'd have to do is basically add that same 4 inches in here. So instead of 2'10½", it'd be, so what is that, 34½, I'd make it 38½. And kind of stretch them up that way. So I wish that's one thing that doesn't lock nicely. You wish that would lock nicely, but it doesn't. Yes? No, the stretching? No worries. Okay, let's talk about just component questions. Anything sort of general about components? For the most part, it's just you're dragging in furniture, kind of putting them in there. Again, you're not decorating the place, you're just giving me a sense of scale to really confirm that the amount of space you're leaving really does work as a little meeting area, as a little desk area. That part's kind of okay. I'm going to tell you where these components are going to go, and we'll learn this again a little bit later in the week. It's this notion that we have all these standard components, and they're really defined kind of in a kind of way that starts out as custom that really grows into becoming standard. But that thing is really defined, if you can imagine this from your drafting days, as it's really an extrusion. Okay. And then the backsplash could be an extrusion or it could be a sweep. It could be either one. It doesn't really, I'm betting it's a sweep, where what they've done is they've taken like a basic profile here and just stretched it around the sides and made a backsplash like that. Okay. So what happens when, as opposed to going ahead and having a square countertop, you have some fabulous like curving cabinet that does something like this? and you want to have a countertop on that, you do the same thing they did, really, only we kind of create it from scratch. What we end up doing is we say, great, let's go ahead and create an extrusion, which is that shape. Make it an inch thick or whatever it is we want the thickness of the countertop to be. Okay. And then we could also go through and make a little profile here and wrap it around and make the backsplash that way. So we can create our own custom parts. If there's one that we don't like, or there isn't one that we need in the library, we'll start creating our own custom parts. Even that whole notion, can you think of this? Floors are really just extrusions. Does that make sense? Because that pink line mode, and then floors are really just extruded elements. So, okay, literally this. You know how to make a hole in a floor. Okay, how would you make a hole in a countertop? It's just as soon as you go ahead and make an interior loop inside of the exterior loop, it's a hole in the extrusion. Okay, so the beauty about all this is that really it all just kind of comes from these basic primitives. Everything at some level is an extrusion, a sweep, a blend. There's only so many basic ways you make geometry. And all these things that we sort of make as components are really just already pre-aggregated collections of that geometry. So the same basic rules apply. So what's going to happen with all this stuff is that the first line of defense is always, is it in the component library? I download it from the internet somewhere. If it isn't, the second line of defense is, oh well, I can make it myself or take an existing one and hack on it a little bit to make it do what I want it to do. Okay, but there's no end to it. It's infinitely customizable. It's just really how much detail you want to get into for this point in the project. Okay, let's go ahead then and redirect our attention to the issue of views, because views is where I want to finish up today in terms of thinking about all of these different views and really how we use views and get them on the sheets, because that's really the tail end of all this. And we won't get completely into it. I still am here to tell you some stuff about adding dimensions to views and text to views, but at least let's get the different views created and crop them, and then we can think about how to make them look even better. Yes? Oh, that would be a good one. If I come back over to level 1, let's see what I got here. What do I got there? I got a nice hole. Not sure if it actually is a hole. It sort of looks like a hole. What I would do is go out and I'll insert, I'll load a family for some sort of sink. Oh, let's get sort of a kitchen single or something like that. Over here, components. There's my kitchen sink. Let me bring it on in there. See if I get it. Oh, it's about the same size. I'm going to rotate it around. Okay, that's actually sort of cheating. I'll put it over here a little bit. I thought I was putting it over there. I think it is over there. The problem is right now, this countertop is actually 4 inches taller than it's supposed to be. Let me put it back down again, because I actually made it a little extra tall. Okay, so I got the sink, I got the hole over there. I think what we should be able to do is, I've got to think about this, because the sinkhole, they're all defined a little bit differently. One thing I can do is, there's this whole notion over here. Sink opening depth, sink opening width, sink opening location. Let me try this a little bit. Let's say, what if that is like 3'8" or something like that? Yeah, that moved it over a little bit. Okay, so it's one of these things, I gotta either sort of move the hole or move the sink and get the two to line up with each other. Here's the sink. What I might want to do here is basically do an align. And I'll grab that edge and say, make that line up with it. Okay, try and pull them together that way. Okay, even better after you get it to lock up, or lock it. That way it'll stay if anything moves. Okay, so that was kind of a quick fluff through answer, but I think that'll give you the essence of getting over it. Okay, views, let's talk about this. the idea is we got all these fantastic model things going on, but you really don't necessarily want to see every aspect of the model all the time. Okay. A lot of times you only want to see pieces of the model and kind of subsets of the views. So, for example, on this floor plan, this level 1 is like the complete model view. If I want to only sort of see a piece of the model view, what we need to do is actually create new views. We'll create additional views that show the same thing, but we'll crop it and adjust the scale to really just show what's of interest to us in this particular instance. So for example, here's level 1, and level 1's looking okay. Let me duplicate level 1. It's going to create a copy of level 1. So I can go ahead and say that I want to have a level 1, I'm going to call it my floor plan. Level 1. Now, level 1 that showed everything, including the backyard, might be good for some views, but if I really want to focus on just the building itself, what I want to do is crop that down and only look at a piece of the view instead. So how would I do that? There's actually a couple of different tools down here at the bottom. One turns on cropping, and one makes the cropping visible. But what you got to do is turn on the cropping, then make the crop region visible. And let me zoom out so you can actually see it. There's the crop region. We can pull that in and really just focus on what it is that we want to see. So as we're doing this, realize we're not actually changing the model. We're just saying for this view, I just want to put on my blinders and restrict myself to looking at this much of it. Okay, the model itself is still there. We're just sort of cropping down this view. If I go back to level 1, we'll still see the whole thing still there.
Did you draw that box or did that?
No, it did it automatically because, well, every view has a crop region. Let me kind of pop back out again. Let me do it from one of the elevations. You'll be clear there too. Okay, I'm looking at the south elevation. Things are looking pretty good. If I don't really want to see all the way out from here to here, but I want to just focus in on that region, what it is down at the bottom, there's a little crop the view. I'll turn that on. But it doesn't automatically show you the box, so I'll say show the crop region right next to it, and then you'll see the box. And then I can pull that in and really focus in on the part that I want to see. Okay, so really as you get going, there's a couple different things that you want to sort of be paying attention to when you use this, sort of the way I usually approach it. I usually like to go ahead and do a couple things. One will be, let's go ahead and crop the view to only show what you want to show in this specific section. So for example, I have the whole floor plan for the entire space. If I want to do a little detail specifically of the kitchen area or something like that and blow it up at a much higher scale so that we can really study the cabinetry and how they're going to connect together, what I might do is go ahead and duplicate this view. And I'm going to call this the kitchen plan. So what do I want to see in the kitchen plan? I'll probably even crop that much more closely. I don't need to see the entire house. I really just want to be focusing on this corner of it right over here. And then since I'm focusing on such a small area, I might want to say not at 1/8 scale, let me bring that up to 1/2 scale or some much bigger scale that'll really let me focus on that. Now, the nice thing is, as you're working with all these things, the model is all the same. It's the same model showing for all these different views. It's just you're just sort of setting up different cameras with different bounds in terms of what you can see. So again, we'll go back over to the elevations. Here it is uncropped. Let me crop that. Zoom out. And I will zoom on in. I'll crop that to the area that I want to see. Okay, so it all starts with this notion of really, what is the crop region? Now, how much zoom do you want? Or it's the scale and the crop region. So those two things to really figure out how big that thing is actually going to be and what the bounds are going to be that shows up on the sheet. Okay, so that's your first task. Is always, for each of the different views you're going to put on a sheet, crop it and scale it so that it's an appropriate size and an appropriate bounding box so that it's going to be what you want to see on the sheet. Next thing to do after you get sort of that piece set up is you want to go ahead and think about what information actually wants to show on that view. Because you don't necessarily want to see everything. Some things you want to see, some things you may not want to see, some things you may want to emphasize and really kind of make very, very prominent. So let me give you an idea of what we have in mind. Oh, for example, let's go to that floor plan. Okay, this floor plan's kind of okay as a floor plan. Yeah, it kind of shows the furniture and stuff like that. Maybe that's okay. If I was going to create something that was called a framing plan, though, I probably wouldn't want to show all the furniture in it. And the framer doesn't need to know what your furniture layout is. The client wants to see that, but the framer doesn't. So I'll duplicate this and call it my framing plan. Now, what's the difference between the floor plan and the framing plan? We could choose a lot of different things, but one of the differences is that we don't want to see the furniture. Maybe we don't want to see the cabinetry even. You might want to see the cabinetry ghosted in just so you get a sense of where that cabinetry will go. We want to go through and do a little filtering, and let's talk about how you do that. How you filter in views is something called visibility graphics. Let's show you that again. We've got a view. I'll choose visibility graphics. And this is a series of different filters. These are all the different categories of objects that are in the project. So if you like layers and you can handle the idea of turning on and off layers, it works very similarly. If I want to turn off the furniture in this view, I turn that off. Okay, and now the furniture is invisible. Similarly, if maybe I do want to show the cabinetry, but the casework, oh, I'd like to half-tone it or somehow make it a little less prominent. I need to sort of let you know it's coming, but it's not your primary concern. I'll go ahead and say OK, and you'll see it's kind of grayed out over there in the corner, a little bit less. I should probably do the same thing with the plumbing fixtures. Visibility graphics. Let me change that to the plumbing fixtures. So again, I'll half-tone them. Okay, so sometimes we take things out or we minimize them so they don't distract. Other times we go through and emphasize things. For example, over here on the kitchen plan, maybe the idea of where that cabinetry is really very important, and I really want to make sure that the cabinet guy really understands where that's going to happen. So what I can do on this plan is, maybe for this one with visibility graphics, for the casework, I can actually give it a little bit of an override. So as opposed to just being the standard line weight, what if we really make those? We're going to make them red, and we're going to give them some really heavy line weight so you cannot miss what I have in mind. I'm thinking that should be there. Let me turn off the thin lines view. Let's see why it didn't do that. Casework, cabinets, countertops. Let me try this. I'm wondering why it's not responding. Is actually what's going on here, because I would have expected that to respond to that. Okay, that did. It's a little smaller. That's a special case of it, so it's we have to go digging on down to that special category. I'll go ahead and make that even fatter. Okay, so the idea here is there's no missing what I have in mind because I've really gone ahead and shown that in great detail. So the idea with all these views is to think about really what is the information that you want to convey and what do you want to focus people's attention on. You filter away things that are going to distract them or highlight things that they really need to pay attention to and create as many different views as you need. There's really no reason not to create views. Views are cheap. You can create as many views as you like. Some views are going to be your working views that you're working with just for your own design work. Some will be presentation views that you're going to put on the drawings. But create as many different views as you need. Here's my kind of rule of thumb. If you find yourself in a view and you go to that visibility graphics and turn things on and off, if you go back up and forth there more than say like 3 times in 5 minutes on the same drawing, okay, that's a good sign that you should probably just create a separate view and have 2 around, one A and one B, that have those 2 different options. So don't go off and have, turn on the roof, turn off the roof, turn on the roof, turn off the roof. If you're hiding things again and again, create 2 different views, one with hidden and one without. Okay, as our final thing today, let's go ahead and talk about really, after you've created a bunch of these views, how do you actually get them on sheets? That'll be our kind of finishing point here. Yes?
You made a box before where you're able to cut at whatever level you wanted to for that view. How did you access that again?
Okay, that's called the section box.
Section.
And what it is in any of the 3D views, something like that, it's down here. It's one of the view properties. Section box, you can turn it on. Okay, and I actually have one with that over here. And now I can go ahead and, in fact, I can duplicate this, and every view has its own section box, so I can be sectioning it different ways. So I can have one that focuses on the first floor, one that focuses on the second floor, whatever it is. Okay, when you get all done with creating your views, and why don't you try and get some views created tomorrow that are going to sort of have what you want in there. Don't worry about the fact they don't have a lot of dimensions in text. We'll talk about that tomorrow in terms of adding annotations to them. But let's see if you can start laying some things out on sheets. And in the template, there's some sheets available, or you can create a new sheet. But here's what you got to do in the end. You got to take your views, drag them on down into sheets. We'll place that. I'm going to drag my framing plan on here too. Notice that what happens when I drag my views onto sheets, if you actually get them to line up, there's a little inference line that'll show you. You actually have those two aligned, and that's sort of a good thing, because as opposed to having them scattered all over the place, if you get them to come across, that's actually lines up. Yes? With the sheets? Okay, how you do that is under the view menu. Okay, so let me kind of pop back over. There's a look of consternation in the back row, so there was clearly a leap. Okay, we'll say view. It's under sheet composition. It's over in here, and there's thing new sheet. That creates a new blank sheet. Within these, there's some different title blocks. There's a title block here that's 30 by 42. The one that's in the starting point's a little smaller. It's 24 by 36. You can really use either one you want to. This one has a lot of excess information, so the one in the title in the starting point's a little bit better. But choose that, and it'll give you a new blank sheet. And then where these all show up down at the bottom is here. We have all these different sheets. They have different names. We can give them a name. I'm going to call this, my floor plans or something like that, plan views. Maybe I'll rename this one over here, the 102 sheet. I'll call that my elevations. Beautiful. So we got some floor plans. If we want to put some elevations in, I'll go ahead and drag some of those in. Let me get my south over there. Let me get my west over there. Notice that when you put things in, drop it in there. Okay, if you get them to line up nicely, okay, and it's always nice to get things to line up horizontally or line up so they register with each other. You actually get that little incher sign that pulls across. This one still needs to be cropped. That's its problem right now. I didn't get that cropped just yet. But go ahead and pull some things in. And really, one of the most interesting and kind of tricky, or not really tricky, it's just sort of one of the things you can do that's probably the most helpful relative to setting up sheets is this whole notion of how you lay out things on sheets really needs to start to be very important in terms of how well you're conveying your information. So think about this, if you're looking at the floor plan, what sort of information does your audience need to see with the floor plan? Do they need to see the framing plan and the details together? I often put all the elevations together just because that often sort of makes sense, but maybe with the elevations, it'd be also helpful to go through and put that exterior view. Okay, whatever it is that's going to tell the story the best. Think about composing those and all the things you want to put in there together. On that interior view, maybe I'm back over on the plan view. If I'm trying to tell the story of this interior of the space, maybe that's a place where I go through and put in some of these like 3D views. So I can put in that little kitchen view. Or I can go through and put in that view kind of looking back towards that ceiling space. Whatever it is that sort of makes the most sense to tell the story. So think a little about the sheet views that you want to have them and tell your story, and then kind of just compose and lay them out. Each of them, they're kind of like little works of art. Each of them tells a story, and you want to get the right information there. Yes?
Can you make some of them, like the little picture views, and make that bigger?
Yeah, it's all a scaling issue. Actually, I take that back. Let's think about that. I'll think about that over here, because perspective views work a little bit differently. Yeah, perspectives don't scale. They kind of resize in a slightly different way. Let me show you how they work. I'll go back over to that sheet. I'll say, here's that view. What I can actually do here is do something called the size crop. See if this will actually work. I think that's going to work over here. And what I'm going to do is I get to decide whether I'm going to rescale that or whether I'm going to like keep it to the same scale and just change the bounding. Either way, I'm going to scale it. So if instead of that being a little 6-inch wide one, I want that to be a 12-inch wide one. Okay, that'll get a lot bigger. So you can sort of rescale them as you need to.
Where did you go with that?
Okay, what it is I'm on the sheet view. I'm choosing a view, one of the perspective views, and there's this thing called size crop. So let's just kind of change the height and width first. So let us go ahead and wrap for today and kind of think about what we want to get accomplished for tomorrow. Because here's what would be really great to do. Okay, if between now and tomorrow you can go ahead and go through and get your design, kind of your basic idea of how the design looks, the walls, the roofs, all those sort of building elements, get some fixtures in there to kind of get a sense of scale, and really think about what are the views that are going to help you tell the story. I think I suggested just a floor plan view, the elevations. A roof plan or a site plan might be a good thing, just kind of give you an overall sense of how the roof lays out from the outside. Maybe it might be a 3D view or two. You don't have to go hog wild on this. It's really just a couple sheets that kind of convey the design at a pretty high level. But see if you can put those views together, get them cropped and scaled to the point where if you get those views on sheets, independent of the fact we don't have a lot of dimensions and things that we'd like to add to that. We'll add some of that stuff tomorrow. But if you can just sort of get your story laid out as a big storyboard of how that works and get those on sheets, that'll give us a really good starting point to get going tomorrow.